The gavel fell with a sound that seemed to echo through Maria Santos's entire life. $3. That's all it took. $3 for 15 acres of concrete and razor wire. $3 for the Coldwater State Penitentiary, a fortress that had been rotting on the edge of nowhere since 1987. $3 for what everyone else in that county auction room knew was a condemned death trap. Maria, 36, single mother of 2, clutched the deed in hands that still bore scars from years of kitchen work at the Riverside Diner. Beside her, her daughter Sofia, 10, squeezed her hand tight. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Her son Lucas, 8, stared at the paper like it might disappear. Behind them, Rick Drummond leaned against the courthouse wall, his expensive suit crisp despite the August heat. He didn't try to hide his smirk. "Hope you know what you're doing, sweetheart," he called as Maria passed. His tone said he knew exactly what she was doing, making the biggest mistake of her life. The woman beside him, a real estate agent Maria recognized from around town, laughed. $3 for a death trap. I give her a week before she realizes what she's done and tries to walk away. Except nobody will take that liability off her hands. Their words followed Maria to the parking lot, each syllable another weight on her shoulders. She'd become used to mockery over the years. Single mother, dropout, waitress at a diner where the tips barely covered gas money. People had been counting her out since she was 16, and pregnant with Sofia, but their daughter deserved better than to hear strangers laugh at their mother's desperation. Maria kept walking, head high, even though her stomach churned with doubt. She didn't know what she was doing. Not really. But 2 months ago, their apartment building had been sold. The new owner wanted the units empty for renovation. Finding another place she could afford on a waitress's salary while raising 2 kids alone. Impossible in a city where rent climbed higher every month. She'd spent sleepless nights searching for solutions. Roommate situations that fell through. Cheaper apartments in dangerous neighborhoods. Her sister's couch, which came with judgment, and the constant reminder that Maria had made bad choices and now had to live with them. Then she'd seen the listing. Abandoned state penitentiary. Tax auction. Minimum bid $3. She'd researched it obsessively. 15 acres, 4 cell blocks, administrative buildings, all sitting empty for 36 years. The county just wanted it off their books. Didn't care who took it as long as someone paid the back taxes. $3. She had that much. Barely. After the auction fees, she'd have $17 left to her name. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly what she needed. The kids waited in her rusted Honda Civic, faces pressed against the windows. When Maria climbed in and held up the deed, Sofia's eyes went wide. "Did we really get it, Mama? We own a prison now?" Maria started, and the engine on the second try, her hands still shaking. "Yeah, Mija. We own a prison." Lucas leaned forward from the back seat, his serious face reflected in the rearview mirror. "The kids at school are going to think that's so cool. We live in an actual prison. We don't tell anyone at school," Maria said quickly. "Not until we know it's safe and we can fix it up. Understand?" Both kids nodded, though Sofia's expression showed she understood what her mother really meant. "Not until we know people won't call child services on us for living in a condemned building." The drive to Coldwater took 3 hours on roads that went from highway to county road to something barely paved. The September sun beat down mercilessly as they climbed into the high desert, leaving behind the last traces of civilization. Maria had packed everything they owned into the trunk and back seat. It wasn't much. Clothes, a few books, Sofia's art supplies, Lucas's collection of rocks and fossils, kitchen supplies, camping gear. The sum total of their existence fit in a 15-year-old Honda with a temperamental engine. They passed through the last small town, Ridgeway, 45 minutes from Coldwater. A gas station, a hardware store, a diner, maybe a dozen houses scattered along the main road. Maria made a mental note of the locations. They'd need supplies, eventually, if they survived the first week. The landscape grew more desolate with each mile. Scrub brush and red dirt stretched endlessly under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. No trees, no rivers, no signs of life, except the occasional hawk circling overhead. When they finally crested the hill and saw it spread below them, Lucas whispered, "It looks like a castle. A scary castle." He wasn't wrong. The Coldwater State Penitentiary sat in a valley surrounded by barren hills, its massive walls rising 30 feet high. Guard towers stood at each corner, their windows dark and empty. The main building, a brutal rectangle of grey concrete and steel, dominated the center. Barbed wire still crowned every wall, rusting but menacing. Unlike the wooden buildings of old ghost towns, this place showed no softness of age. It looked exactly like what it was, a cage built to hold the most dangerous men in the state. Sofia grabbed her mother's arm. "Mama, are there still prisoners in there?" "No, baby. It's been empty for over 30 years. Nobody's been here in decades." But as they drove through the main gate, its bars hanging open like a broken jaw, Maria felt a chill despite the heat. The place wasn't just empty. It felt wrong. Abandoned, yes, but not forgotten. Not by everyone. They parked in what had been the staff lot. Painted parking lines, still faintly visible under decades of wind-blown dirt. Maria killed the engine, and they sat in silence, staring at the massive entrance. Above it, carved in stone, Coldwater State Penitentiary, 1952. "Are we really going to live here?" Lucas asked, his voice small. Maria looked at her children in the rearview mirror. She'd promised them stability, safety, a home. All she had to offer was this concrete nightmare she'd bought for $3 because she had nothing else left. "We're going to make it work," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. "Just like we always do." She'd been telling them that for years. When their father left, when they moved from their house to an apartment, when they moved again to a cheaper apartment, when Maria lost her job at the factory and had to take the waitressing position that paid half as much. "We'll make it work, just like we always do." Sometimes Maria wondered if her kids still believed her. The main entrance door wasn't locked. It stood slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry and never returned. Maria pushed it open, and the hinges shrieked in protest. Inside, the air was thick and stale, decades of dust hanging in shafts of sunlight that slanted through barred windows. They stood in a vast lobby, guard stations on either side. A heavy steel door straight ahead, marked Cell Block A. Everything was grey. Grey concrete floors, grey walls, grey steel. Even the light seemed grey, filtered through decades of dirt on the windows. Sofia found a clipboard hanging on a rusted hook. The last entry was dated the 3rd of November 1987. Final transfer complete. Building secured. The signature was illegible. The ink faded to brown. "Why did they close it, Mama?" Lucas asked, his hand tight in hers. "I don't know, baby. Maybe we'll find out." They'd brought camping gear, sleeping bags, and a camp stove. Maria had no illusions about this place having working electricity or plumbing. They'd have to start from scratch, just like pioneers. Except pioneers didn't usually settle in abandoned prisons. They spent the first night in what had been the warden's office, a relatively small room with a window that actually opened. Maria pushed decades of dust and debris into corners, spread tarps on the floor, and set up their sleeping bags. As darkness fell, the prison took on a different character. Every small sound echoed, amplified by concrete and steel, into something ominous. Wind whistled through broken windows. Somewhere deep in the building, a door banged rhythmically, like a slow heartbeat. Sofia curled against Maria's side. "I don't like it here, Mama. It feels like the walls are watching us." Maria stroked her daughter's hair, fighting her own unease. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Old buildings make strange sounds. That's all. Tomorrow, in the daylight, it'll look better. But she didn't believe it. And judging by Sofia's silence, neither did her daughter. That night, Maria lay awake long after the children slept. She stared at the ceiling, visible in the moonlight streaming through the window, and wondered what she'd done. Had she finally pushed too far in her desperate attempt to keep them together? Would child services show up and take the kids because she'd moved them into a condemned prison? She thought about Rick, Drummond's smirk, the real estate agent's laughter, the pitying looks from other people at the auction. Everyone knew she'd made a terrible mistake. Everyone except Maria, who'd seen one last option when all others had closed. Morning came harsh and bright, desert sun flooding through dirty windows. Maria woke stiff and sore, her back protesting the concrete floor despite the tarp and sleeping bag. The kids were still asleep. Lucas sprawled like a starfish. Sofia curled in a tight ball. In daylight, the prison was less menacing, but no more welcoming. It was simply massive, overwhelming. Maria walked through the admin building, opening doors, assessing what they'd gotten themselves into. Most rooms were stripped bare, furniture removed when the prison closed. But in one office, she found filing cabinets still full of papers, personnel records, transfer documents, incident reports, all yellowing with age. One report caught her eye. The 15th of March, 1987. Riot in D Block. 3 guards injured. Extensive damage to north wall. Repairs ongoing. She found more reports from that spring and summer. Increasing violence. Equipment failures. Structural problems. The final document in the file was a federal order. Coldwater State Penitentiary condemned for habitation effective the 1st of November 1987. All inmates to be transferred to alternative facilities. Building to be seized for outstanding tax liens. So it hadn't just closed. It had been condemned. And she'd just bought a condemned building for $3 and moved her children into it. The sound of an approaching vehicle jerked her from these cheerful thoughts. She rushed to the window and saw a beat-up Ford truck pulling through the gates. An old man climbed out, lean and weathered, maybe 70 years old. He carried a toolbox in one hand and raised the other in a wave. Maria met him at the entrance, instinctively positioning herself between the stranger and her children. "Name's Harold Briggs," he called. "Live about 10 miles down the valley. Heard someone actually bought this place." He studied her with sharp blue eyes. Didn't expect it to be a woman with kids. Maria Santos. "These are my kids, Sofia and Lucas." Harold set down his toolbox. "I worked here, guard for 20 years before they shut it down. Been wondering if anyone would ever take this place on." He looked around at the crumbling facility. "Can't say I expected anyone would be crazy enough to try." Maria bristled. "I'm not crazy. I'm practical. We needed a home we could afford." "Didn't say you were crazy for buying it. Said you were crazy for trying to make it work. There's a difference." His weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. "But maybe crazy's what this place needs. You got any idea what you're dealing with here? A building that needs a lot of work," Maria replied evenly. Harold snorted. "It's more than that." "Ah, but you'll find out soon enough." He picked up his toolbox. "In the meantime, that generator in the basement might still work. Want me to take a look?" Maria hesitated, every instinct screaming not to trust strangers. But Harold's eyes held nothing but honest curiosity and maybe a hint of respect for her desperate courage. "That would be incredibly helpful. Thank you." Over the next several hours, Harold worked on the ancient diesel generator, while Maria and the kids explored the sprawling complex. The prison consisted of 4 main cell blocks, radiating from a central control hub, an admin building, a cafeteria, workshops, and a hospital wing. Everything was built to last, constructed with the grim permanence of a place designed to hold the worst society had to offer. Walls were 2 feet thick, Doors were solid steel. Windows were barred with iron that hadn't rusted through despite decades of neglect. Lucas found the library. Shelves still holding hundreds of books with cracked spines and yellowed pages. Sofia discovered the chapel. Stained glass windows, somehow still intact, casting colored light across dusty pews. And Maria found the segregation unit, the SHU, solitary confinement. A short hallway lined with steel doors, each with a small slot for food trays. She opened one door and immediately wished she hadn't. The cell was perhaps 6 feet by 8. Concrete walls covered in scratched graffiti and calculations. A steel bed frame bolted to the floor. A toilet without a seat. She could imagine spending days, weeks, months in that tiny space. The crushing isolation. The suffocating walls. She quickly closed the door, her heart racing. Nobody should be kept like that, she whispered. No wonder this place felt wrong. A mechanical rumble echoed through the building. Lights flickered, then steadied. Harold had gotten the generator running. When Maria returned to the admin building, she found the old guard in the warden's office, studying the papers she'd been reading earlier. "You found the riot reports," he said without looking up. "I found a lot of reports. Want to tell me what really happened here?" Harold was quiet for a long moment. This place was a powder keg in its final years. Overcrowded, understaffed, old infrastructure falling apart. The riot in March was bad, but it wasn't the worst of it. He looked at her directly. 3 guards died that spring. Official reports said accidents, falls, equipment malfunctions, that kind of thing. But I was there. I knew those men. They were veterans. Careful. Those weren't accidents. What were they? Murders. Covered up because the warden didn't want federal investigators crawling over the place. He thought he could handle it internally. Harold shook his head. He was wrong. By summer, even the toughest guards wanted out. When the federal government finally condemned the building for structural issues, we all breathed easier. Gave everyone an excuse to close it down. Structural issues, Maria repeated, her stomach sinking. How bad? Bad enough that you should be careful. Some areas are probably still solid, but others. He trailed off meaningfully. Sofia appeared in the doorway. "Mama, Lucas found something." In the control room. They followed her to the prison's central hub, a circular room with windows overlooking all 4 cell blocks. Lucas stood before a bank of lockers, one door hanging open. "Look," he said, pointing inside. The locker contained a guard's uniform, still hanging on a hook. Beneath it, a small metal box. Harold reached past Lucas and picked up the box. His expression shifted, becoming unreadable. "I'll be damned. That's Jim Vickers's locker. He was one of the guards who died." He opened the box. Inside were several items. A watch, a wallet, a badge, and a small notebook filled with handwritten entries. Harold flipped through pages, his face growing darker. Jesus. Jim was documenting everything. Guard corruption, inmate deaths, falsified reports. He looked at Maria. "This is what got him killed." "Killed?" "I thought the official report said accident." It did, but Jim's wife never believed it. She raised hell, tried to get investigators involved. Then suddenly, she dropped it, moved away. I always wondered why. He held up the notebook. "This is why. Someone paid her off, or threatened her into silence." Maria felt cold, despite the desert heat. "Who?" "The warden, probably. Wayne Garrett. He ran this place like his personal kingdom. Had connections, political pull. When the prison closed, he walked away clean. Last I heard, he retired to Nevada. He's still alive? Unless he died recently. Would be in his 70s now." Harold studied the notebook. This could have destroyed his career back then. Might still cause him problems. Sofia had been quietly listening. Now, she tugged Maria's sleeve. "Mama, if that man did bad things, shouldn't someone know about it? Out of the mouths of babes." Maria looked at the notebook, then at Harold. "What do you think?" The old guard was silent for a moment. "I think the past has a way of catching up to people. And I think maybe Coldwater's been waiting for someone brave enough to dig up its secrets. They spent the rest of the day making the warden's office more livable. Harold helped Maria repair a broken window frame and showed her how to maintain the generator. He also marked areas of the prison that were structurally unsound, places they should avoid. As evening approached, Harold prepared to leave. At his truck, he turned to Maria. "You should know something. Rick Drummond, the man at the auction, his father was Wayne Garrett's deputy warden, Richard Drummond. He was up to his neck in the corruption here." Maria's eyes widened. "So Rick knows about all this?" "More than that. He's probably been monitoring this place for years, making sure nobody poked around. When you bought it, you became a problem he'll want to solve." "By doing what?" Harold's expression was grim. "That's what worries me. Be careful, Maria. Lock your doors. Watch for anyone coming around. And if you find anything else interesting in this place, hide it well before word gets out." After he left, Maria shared what she'd learned with the kids over a dinner of canned soup heated on the camp stove. They sat in the warden's office, their small circle of battery-powered lanterns pushing back the darkness. "Why would people hurt other people just to keep secrets?" Lucas asked. Maria chose her words carefully. "Sometimes people do terrible things, and instead of admitting it and facing the consequences, they try to hide it. That makes them even more dangerous, because they'll do anything to keep the truth buried." "But we found the truth," Sofia said, gesturing at Jim Vickers's notebook, which now sat on the desk. "So what do we do with it?" "I don't know yet, Mija. We need to be smart about this." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Harold's warnings, about Rick Drummond's smirk at the auction, about the secrets buried in this place. She bought Coldwater thinking she was getting cheap shelter. Instead, she'd inherited a poisoned legacy. Around midnight, she heard it. The sound of a vehicle approaching, engine deliberately quiet. She rushed to the window and saw headlights, still distant, creeping toward the prison. Maria shook the kids awake. "Get dressed, quickly. Don't turn on any lights." They moved fast, years of instability teaching them to respond instantly to their mother's urgent voice. Maria grabbed the most important items: Jim Vickers's notebook, their documents, the camping gear, and led them through dark corridors to a side exit Harold had shown her. The vehicle, a black SUV, pulled into the main lot, just as they slipped into the darkness outside the prison walls. Maria found a spot behind a concrete barrier where they could watch without being seen. Two men emerged from the SUV. Even in the poor light, she recognized Rick Drummond's expensive clothes. The other man was older, thick-bodied, moving with the careful precision of someone used to violence. They entered the prison through the main door. Flashlight beams played through windows as they searched the interior. "They're looking for us," Sofia whispered, fear in her voice. "Or for something they think we might have found," Maria replied, pulling her children closer. The men spent perhaps 20 minutes inside before emerging. Even from a distance, Maria could hear Drummond's angry voice, though not his words. They drove away, gravel crunching under their tires. Maria waited a full hour before leading the kids back inside. The warden's office had been ransacked. Their belongings were scattered, their sleeping bags thrown aside, papers pulled from drawers and filing cabinets. But the notebook was safe. Maria had hidden it in her coat before they fled. "We can't stay here," Sofia said, looking at the destruction. "It's not safe." Maria surveyed the mess, her jaw tight. They had nowhere else to go. This condemned prison was all they had. But Sofia was right. It wasn't safe. Not yet. "We're not leaving," she said firmly. "We're going to make this place secure, and we're going to find out what Rick Drummond is so afraid we'll discover." The next morning, Maria drove the kids into the nearest town, Ridgeway, population 3,000, 45 minutes away. She spent precious money on supplies, heavy chains and padlocks, a motion sensor alarm system that ran on batteries, and a used police scanner someone was selling at the hardware store. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Janet, studied Maria's purchases with knowing eyes. "You're the one who bought Coldwater," she said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Small town. Word travels." Janet rang up the items. "You should know. People around here have opinions about that place." "What kind of opinions?" "What?" Janet glanced toward the store's back room, then lowered her voice. "That it should have been torn down 30 years ago. That nothing good ever happened there, and nothing good ever will. That the ground it sits on is cursed." "I don't believe in curses." "Maybe not. But you should believe in the men who ran that place. Some of them still live around here. They don't like anyone poking around their past." Maria met her eyes. "Then they're going to have a problem with me." Janet's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across her face. "You need help, you call me." She scribbled a phone number on the receipt. "My husband was a guard there. Quit in '86, before the worst of it. He might be willing to talk, if you ask the right questions." Back at the prison, Maria installed the chains and locks on the main entrance and the side exit they'd used to escape. She set up the motion sensors at key approach points. It wasn't much, but it would give them warning if anyone came around. That afternoon, Harold returned with his truck loaded with supplies: lumber, tools, a generator maintenance kit, and several boxes of canned food. "Can't have you starving out here," he said gruffly when Maria protested. "Besides, I'm getting curious about what you might find in this place. Consider it an investment in eventual answers." Together, they began making the admin building more habitable. Harold showed Maria how to patch the roof, board up broken windows, and reinforce doors. The work was hard, but Maria had spent years doing physical labor. Her hands might be scarred, but they were strong. Lucas helped Harold measure and cut boards, asking a million questions about tools and construction. Sofia organized their supplies, creating inventory lists, with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned early that organization meant survival. On the third day, while Harold and Lucas worked on the roof, Maria and Sofia explored the prison's hospital wing. Most equipment had been removed, but old cabinets still held supplies: bandages, syringes, ancient medication bottles. Sofia opened a drawer in the nurse's station, gasped, "Mama, look!" Inside was a cassette tape, labeled in careful handwriting. "Dr. Morrison, final report, October 1987. They found an old tape player in one of the offices, its batteries long dead. But Harold's truck had a tape deck. They gathered around it, Harold, Maria, and the kids, and pressed play. A woman's voice emerged, tired and angry. "This is Dr. Catherine Morrison, Chief Medical Officer of Coldwater State Penitentiary. This recording serves as my final report and resignation, effective immediately. For the past 2 years, I have documented systematic abuse, medical neglect, and what I can only describe as deliberate harm inflicted on inmates under the guise of security measures. Warden Garrett and Deputy Warden Drummond have consistently overruled my medical decisions, denied necessary care, and retaliated against any guard or staff member who raised concerns. Most disturbing are the deaths. 6 inmates have died in custody this year under suspicious circumstances. Each death was officially attributed to natural causes or suicide, despite evidence suggesting otherwise. I have submitted detailed reports to the State Corrections Board, but these have been systematically buried. The final incident occurred 2 weeks ago. An inmate in segregation, James Mitchell, died of what the official report calls cardiac arrest. He was 28 years old with no history of heart problems. I personally examined the body and found evidence of severe beating, including fractured ribs and internal bleeding. When I insisted on a proper autopsy, I was threatened with termination. I can no longer be complicit in these atrocities. I am resigning and taking all my documentation to the FBI field office in Denver. Let this tape serve as my testimony should anything happen to me, Before I-5. The recording cut off with a sharp click. They sat in stunned silence. Finally, Harold spoke, his voice rough. Kathy Morrison. I remember her. She quit suddenly in October, 87, just before the prison closed. Rumor was she'd taken a better job elsewhere. She was going to the FBI, Maria said. Did she make it? I don't know. But given that the warden retired comfortably and Drummond went into private security consulting, I'd guess her report never saw the light of day. Sofia's voice was small. What happened to the doctor? Harold pulled out his phone, searched for a moment, then went very still. According to this obituary doctor, Catherine Morrison died in a car accident in November 1987. Single vehicle crash on a mountain road. Authorities concluded she fell asleep at the wheel. Maria felt sick. They killed her, probably, and made it look like an accident, just like they did with Jim Vickers and probably others who got too close to the truth. Lucas, who had been quiet throughout, suddenly said, "So we have proof now, right? The notebook and the tape. We should tell someone." "We should," Harold agreed. "But we need to be careful. Drummond had powerful friends back then. Those connections might still exist." Maria thought about Rick, Drummond, breaking into the prison, searching for something. "They know we found something. That's why they came looking. Then we need to move fast, before they realize what we actually have." Harold straightened. "There's a federal prosecutor in Denver, woman named Sandra Reyes. She's made a name for herself going after cold cases involving police and corrections corruption. She might be willing to listen. Will she believe us? She'll believe the tape and the notebook. And if we can find Dr. Morrison's documentation, the files she mentioned that would seal it." Maria looked at the prison, stretching around them. Hundreds of rooms, endless hiding places. She said she was taking her documentation to Denver, but if they killed her before she got there, then maybe she hid it first. Sofia finished. Somewhere in the prison, somewhere she thought was safe. They split up to full search. Harold and Lucas took the admin building, going through every filing cabinet and storage room. Maria and Sofia tackled the hospital wing, checking every drawer, cabinet, and closet. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, light shifting through barred windows. They found plenty of forgotten items, old uniforms, broken equipment, yellowed newspapers, but nothing that looked like Dr. Morrison's files. It was Sofia who finally found the clue. In the pharmacy storage room, behind a shelf of expired medications, she discovered writing scratched into the concrete wall. Small letters, barely visible, covered by years of dust. "Mama, look at this." Maria knelt beside her daughter, wiping away the dust. The scratched words became legible. "If you're reading this, something happened to me. My documentation is in the one place they would never look, where they put the men they wanted to forget. D-17. D-17, Maria repeated. Cell 17 in D block? They found Harold and Lucas, explained what they'd discovered. The old guard's face went pale. D block. That was maximum security, the worst of the worst. If she hid something there. He trailed off. "What?" Maria demanded. "D block is the most damaged part of the prison. That's where the riot happened, where the north wall was compromised. I marked it as unsafe, remember? The floor is unstable, walls are cracked. It could collapse at any time." Maria felt torn. They needed that documentation. But risking their lives to get it? Lucas spoke up, his young voice firm. "We have to get it, Mama. All those people who died, they deserve for the truth to come out." Sofia nodded agreement. "Dr. Morrison died trying to tell the truth. We can't just give up because it's dangerous." Maria looked at her children. These brave, principled kids, who'd already survived more than most adults. They were right. This wasn't just about them anymore. "We'll go carefully," she decided. "Harold, you stay here with the kids. I'll go into D block and look for cell 17. "The hell you will," Harold said flatly. "I worked in that block for 15 years. I know its layout better than anyone. We go together. Or nobody goes. Then who stays with the kids? We do it quickly, in and out. The kids stay by the entrance, ready to run if there's trouble. They gathered what they needed: flashlights, rope, a first aid kit. Harold found an old prison map and traced the route to cell D-17 with his finger. Second tier, east side. We take the main corridor, up the stairs, along the catwalk to the cell. 10 minutes there, 10 minutes to search, 10 minutes back, half an hour maximum. And if the structure starts to fail, we run like hell. D block was significantly different from the rest of the prison. The moment they entered through its heavy steel door, Maria understood why Harold had marked it as dangerous. The ceiling had partially collapsed in several places, debris covering the floor. Walls bore massive cracks, some wide enough to see through to the outside. The smell was worse here, too decay, and something metallic that made her gag. "Stay close," Harold whispered, though there was no one to hear them. "Watch where you step." They made their way down the main corridor, stepping over rubble, ducking under hanging rebar. The cells on either side stood open, doors torn from their hinges during the riot. Interiors dark and foreboding. The stairway to the second tier was intact but treacherous, steps covered in debris and bird droppings. They climbed carefully, testing each step before putting their weight on it. The second-tier catwalk ran along the perimeter of the block, looking down into the common area below. It swayed slightly under their weight, metal groaning in protest. "Don't look down," Harold advised. "Just move slow and steady." Cell D-17 was 3/4 of the way along the east wall. Its door hung at an angle, blocking the entrance. Together, Maria and Harold managed to force it open enough to squeeze through. Inside, the cell was like all the others, small, sparse, designed for nothing but containment. A concrete bed platform, a steel toilet, walls covered in scratched graffiti, nothing that looked like hidden documentation. Where would she hide it? Maria wondered, running her hands along the walls, feeling for loose stones or hidden compartments. Harold examined the bed platform. "If I wanted to hide something in a cell, I'd..." He pressed on one corner of the platform, and it shifted slightly. "Well, I'll be damned." The corner of the concrete platform lifted up, revealing a hollow space underneath. Inside was a large metal document box, the kind banks use for safety deposit boxes. Harold pulled it out carefully. The box was sealed with a padlock, but years of moisture had rusted it through. One sharp blow with a piece of rebar, and it snapped open. Inside were files, dozens of them, meticulously organized and labeled. Medical records, autopsy, reports, photographs, written testimonies from other medical staff and sympathetic guards, financial records showing payoffs and falsified expense reports. "This is it," Maria breathed. "This is everything." A deep groaning sound made them both freeze. The catwalk was shaking, metal screaming under stress. "We need to go," Harold said urgently. "Now." They grabbed the box and squeezed back through the cell door. The catwalk swayed violently as they ran, pieces of railing breaking away and falling to the floor below. Behind them, the section they'd just left gave way entirely, crashing down in an explosion of metal and concrete. "Move! Move! Move!" Harold shouted. They reached the stairway, just as another section of catwalk collapsed. Maria slipped on the debris-covered steps, nearly dropped the box, but Harold grabbed her arm and steadied her. They half ran, half fell down to the first floor, then sprinted for the exit. Sofia and Lucas waited by the door, eyes wide with fear. The moment Maria and Harold emerged, the kids grabbed them in fierce hugs. "The whole thing's coming down," Harold panted, looking back at D Block. As if to confirm his words, another grinding crash echoed from inside. They moved away from the building, carrying the precious document box to safety. Only when they reached the admin building did they stop, gasping for breath, hands shaking from adrenaline. Maria opened the box again, really examining its contents this time. The documentation was stunning in its thoroughness. Dr. Morrison had recorded everything. Names, dates, methods, evidence. She'd even documented the payoffs. Traced money moving from a private account belonging to Warden Garrett to various officials in the State Corrections Board. This would have destroyed them, Harold said, flipping through the files. No wonder they killed her to keep it quiet. But why leave it here? Sofia asked. Why not just take it with her to the FBI? Harold found a letter, paper-clipped to the inside of the box's lid. She did plan to take it. Listen to this. If you're reading this, I never made it to Denver. I've been threatened repeatedly since announcing my resignation, and I believe Warden Garrett means to stop me by any means necessary. I've hidden these files in D17, the cell of James Mitchell, whose death brought all this to a head. If something happens to me, I hope someone brave enough will find this evidence and finish what I started. The men who died in Coldwater deserve justice. The system that enabled their deaths must be exposed. I've made copies of the most critical documents and sent them to 3 trusted colleagues with instructions to come forward if I die under suspicious circumstances. But I'm not naive. Garrett has long arms and deep pockets. Those copies might never surface. This is my insurance policy, hidden in plain sight, in a prison that will someday be someone else's problem. May they have better luck than I did. Dr. Catherine Morrison, the 28th of October, 1987. They sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what they'd found. This woman had known she might die, had prepared for that possibility, and had still tried to do the right thing. What happened to the colleagues? Lucas asked. The ones she sent copies to? Harold pulled out his phone again, searching. After several minutes, his face grew grim. I found 2 of them. Dr. Richard Chen died in a house fire in early 1988. Dr. Margaret Winters died in a mugging gone wrong around the same time. And the third? Maria asked, though she already knew the answer. Can't find any information, which probably means they either went into hiding or he didn't finish the sentence. Sofia's voice was small but steady. So we're the only ones who have this now. Yeah, Maria said. We're the only ones. The implications were clear. Rick Drummond knew they'd found something. If word got out that they had Dr. Morrison's files, the documentation that could destroy his father's legacy and possibly implicate him in the cover-up, they would be in serious danger. We need to move fast, Harold said. Get this to Federal Prosecutor Reyes before Drummond realizes what we have. And then what? Maria asked. Even if she takes the case, it'll take months, maybe years to go to trial. We can't hide forever. No, Harold agreed. But we can make copies. Lots of them. Send them to newspapers, TV stations, civil rights organizations. Make it so widely known that there's no point in silencing us. It was a good plan. But first, they needed to get to Denver. And Maria's 15-year-old Honda, with its temperamental engine and bold tires, might not make the 4-hour drive. As if reading her mind, Harold said, "Take my truck. It's reliable, and nobody's watching for it. I'll stay here with the kids. Keep an eye on things. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Those bastards destroyed this place and killed good people to cover it up. If you're finally bringing them to justice, I want to help." Maria looked at this old man who'd appeared in their lives just when they needed him most. "Why are you helping us, Harold? Really?" His weathered face softened. "I worked here for 20 years. I saw things. I knew things weren't right. And I kept my mouth shut because I had a mortgage, kids in college, a wife with medical bills. I told myself it wasn't my fight, that I was just a guard doing his job. But I knew about the abuse, the corruption, the deaths, and I did nothing. I've lived with that for 30 years. He met her eyes. Maybe this is my chance to make it right. Maria drove to Denver the next morning. the document box hidden under a blanket in the truck bed. She made copies first, at 3 different copy shops, spreading them out so no single location had the full set. She sent copies via certified mail to 5 different newspapers and 2 civil rights organizations. Then she went to the federal building and asked for Prosecutor Sandra Reyes. It took 3 hours of waiting, but finally Reyes agreed to see her. The prosecutor was younger than Maria expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an air of barely contained energy. "Mrs. Santos, I understand you have information about corruption at a closed prison facility." Maria handed her Dr. Morrison's files. "I have proof that Warden Wayne Garrett and Deputy Warden Richard Drummond were directly responsible for multiple inmate deaths, systematic abuse, and a cover-up that included the murder of at least 4 people who tried to expose them." Reyes's eyebrows rose. She began reading, flipping through pages, her expression growing darker with each document. An hour passed, then 2, as she worked through the files. Finally, she looked up. "Where did you get this?" Maria explained everything. The $3 auction, the midnight search, the cassette tape, the hidden files in D17. When she finished, Reyes sat back in her chair. "This is extraordinary, and it's exactly what I need to reopen several cold cases I've been looking at. Suspicious deaths of prisoners, corruption in the state correction system, connections to political figures who blocked reforms. So, you'll investigate." "I'll do more than investigate. I'll prosecute. This documentation is solid enough to bring charges." Reyes leaned forward. "But you need to understand what this means, Mrs. Santos. The people you're going up against are powerful, connected, and have already killed to protect their secrets. They will come after you. They already have. That's why I'm here." Reyes studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Here's what we're going to do. I'm putting you and your children in protective custody immediately. You'll be moved to a safe house while we build the case. What about our home? The prison? Mrs. Santos, that building is evidence now. We'll need to secure it, conduct our own investigation. You can't stay there anyway." Maria felt a strange sense of loss. They'd only been at Coldwater for 2 weeks, but it had become theirs, their refuge, their project, their home. And now, she was losing it again. As if reading her thoughts, Reyes added, "This won't last forever. Once the case is resolved, the prison will be returned to you. What you do with it then is your decision." The next 3 months passed in a blur of safe houses, depositions, and preparations for trial. Maria and the kids were moved 5 times as the case built momentum. Reyes worked tirelessly, adding charge after charge as her investigation uncovered even more corruption than Dr. Morrison had documented. During this time, Maria received word from back home. The news had spread about what she'd discovered. The mockery had transformed into astonishment. Rick Drummond's wife had left him, taking their children. Several of his business partners had distanced themselves. The real estate agent who'd laughed at the auction had called Maria's lawyer, trying to apologize. But Maria wasn't interested in apologies. She was focused on justice. Wayne Garrett was arrested at his Nevada retirement home. Richard Drummond was taken into custody while trying to flee the country. Rick Drummond was charged as an accessory to obstruction of justice for his break-in at the prison and attempts to intimidate Maria. The trials were media sensations. News outlets called it the Coldwater Scandal, drawing parallels to other cases of institutional abuse and cover-ups. Maria found herself testifying in front of cameras, telling their story to a rapt audience. The courtroom was packed the day Maria took the stand. She wore a simple dress, her hands folded in her lap, and told the truth about everything. About buying the prison for $3 because they had nowhere else to go. About finding the evidence. About being terrorized by men who wanted the truth to stay buried. The defense attorney tried to paint her as an opportunist, someone who'd fabricated evidence for financial gain. But when he asked why she'd risked so much, Maria's answer was simple and devastating. Because Dr. Morrison died trying to tell the truth. Because Jim Vickers died trying to document what was wrong. Because inmates died in that prison, and nobody cared enough to ask why. I bought Coldwater for $3, and everyone laughed at me. They thought I was desperate and stupid. Maybe I was, but at least I gave a damn about what happened to those people. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense attorney had no follow-up questions. But the most powerful moment came when Harold Briggs took the stand. The old guard, voice shaking with emotion, described the culture of fear that had existed at Coldwater, the way good people had been intimidated into silence, the weight of guilt he'd carried for 3 decades. "I was a coward," he said, tears running down his weathered face. "I saw wrongs and did nothing. I can never make that right, but I can stand here today and tell the truth, even if it's 30 years late." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Warden Wayne Garrett was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Richard Drummond received 25 years. Rick Drummond, as an accessory, got 7 years and was ordered to pay substantial restitution. Additionally, the state of Colorado was ordered to pay $15 million to the families of inmates who had died at Coldwater, and another $2 million to Maria Santos as a whistleblower reward for exposing the corruption. When Reyes called Maria with the news, she couldn't process it. $2 million, more money than she'd ever imagined having. "What do I do with it?" she asked, feeling overwhelmed. "Whatever you want," Reyes said with a smile in her voice. "You've earned it." But it was Sofia who suggested the answer. "We should fix Coldwater. Make it something good, so people remember what happened there, but also see that something better came from it." Lucas nodded eagerly. "Like a museum, or a place that helps people." Maria thought about the prison sitting empty, its dark history now exposed to light. What could they do with such a place? How could they transform something built to cage and hurt into something that helped and healed? The idea took shape slowly, refined through conversations with architects, educators, and community leaders. Coldwater would become a mixed-use facility, part museum documenting its dark history, part community center offering resources for formerly incarcerated individuals, and part educational facility teaching about criminal justice reform. The architectural plans preserved the prison's structure, but transformed its purpose. Cell blocks became classrooms and counseling spaces. The cafeteria became a community kitchen offering job training. The admin building was converted into offices for non-profit organizations working on justice reform. Most significantly, D17, the cell where Dr. Morrison had hidden her files, was preserved exactly as found and designated as a memorial to all who had died at Coldwater and all who had tried to speak truth to power. The renovation took 18 months. During that time, Maria, Sofia, and Lucas lived in a real house in Ridgeway, a comfortable place with working, plumbing, and electricity, and no dark history weighing on its walls. But they visited Coldwater almost daily, watching the transformation. Harold supervised much of the construction, his expertise invaluable in preserving historical elements while modernizing the facility. He seemed to shed years during the process, as if the work was washing away 3 decades of guilt. The grand opening was held on a bright October morning, exactly 2 years after Maria had bought the prison for $3. Hundreds of people attended, including families of the inmates who had died, former guards, justice reform advocates, and media from across the country. Maria stood at the entrance, the same spot where she'd first pushed open the door with trembling hands and addressed the crowd. 2 years ago, I bought this place because I was desperate. I had nowhere else to go, no other options. I thought I was just buying shelter. Instead, I found a responsibility. The men who died here deserved better. They deserved a system that treated them as human beings, not animals to be caged and forgotten. They deserved staff who saw their role as rehabilitation, not punishment. They deserved a chance at redemption. We can't change what happened here. We can't bring back the dead or undo the suffering, but we can learn from it. We can demand better, and we can create something from these dark walls that serves the light. Welcome to the Coldwater Justice and Community Center. May it stand as a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked, and as a promise that we can always choose to do better. The applause was thunderous. As Maria cut the ribbon, she felt hands on her shoulders, Sofia and Lucas standing beside her, their presence grounding her. They had come here with nothing. They had found corruption and death, but they had also found courage, truth, and a way to transform darkness into light. That evening, after the crowds had left, Maria walked through the facility with Harold. They stopped at D17, now behind glass but still visible, preserved as a testament to Dr. Morrison's courage. She'd be proud, you know, Harold said quietly. Kathy Morrison. She'd be proud that her sacrifice meant something. I hope so, Maria replied. I hope they all know that they're remembered. As they stood there in the converted prison, in the building that had held so much pain and now offered so much hope, Maria thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. From a $3 auction to a multi-million-dollar justice center. From desperation to purpose. From secrets to truth. The gavel had fallen 2 years ago for $3. But what Maria had really purchased was a chance to right wrongs, to give voice to the silenced, and to prove that even the darkest places can become beacons of light. Some doors, once opened, reveal not just forgotten horrors but also opportunities for transformation. And sometimes the people everyone dismisses, the desperate single mother who bought a condemned prison for $3, turn out to be exactly who the world needs. Maria Santos and her children had come to Coldwater looking for shelter. What they found was their purpose, and in finding it, they had given purpose back to a place that had lost its way long ago. The prison that no one wanted, that had been abandoned for decades with its terrible secrets sealed behind concrete and steel, had finally found redemption. Not through forgetting its past, but by remembering it, learning from it, and transforming it into something that honored the dead by serving the living. And that, Maria thought, as she watched the sunset paint the prison walls in shades of gold, was worth far more than $3. It was worth everything. Thank you so much for watching, until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.